Well, thank you. I'm going to try and avoid doing a bicycle broadcast as far as I can. And it was great to hear Deborah earlier on. In fact, it was great because only the other night I was watching the DVD of the Marigold Hotel film, which she wrote the book for. It was also great listening to Ursef, the children's author, because that reminded me of the first story I want to tell you tonight. And that's the story of Eileen Caldwell. Anybody heard of Eileen Caldwell? One or two might have done, because Eileen set up the very first children's library service in Hendon's Children's Library, and she became internationally famous for doing so. And it wasn't just because she was a librarian, but because she was an excellent storyteller as well, and she knew how to make those links between the children and the books and the children, inspire the children, excite them, and make them lovers of books the rest of their lives. And she could do that because she was a storyteller and because she was a librarian. And that's why, in these circumstances, we're not just talking about the library building, we're not just talking about the books, we're talking about the need for librarians, professional librarians as well. And the other story I want to tell you is my own. We've heard my two personal stories, so I thought I'd give you mine. And some of you know, I grew up in East Yorkshire, and when I was doing my A-levels, I used to study in my local library. They had the foreign language books I needed to study French and German. They had the history books in depth that I needed to study for my history A-levels. And because of that library, I passed my A-levels with sufficiently high grades to get to university and to get my law degree. If I hadn't used that library, I probably would have been able to achieve that. And later on, when I decided to become a lawyer, I had to do my Part 2 Law Society exams. And at that time, I was living south of the river with my aunt and her brood of 4 small children. And the only place I could study was in the local library. So I wouldn't have become a lawyer if it hadn't been for that local library south of the river. And if I had become a lawyer and built a successful law career, I probably would have become a politician. If I hadn't become a politician, I probably wouldn't be sat here tonight. So you can blame the Billington Library and the Barnes Library for the fact I'm here tonight. And you can form your own view whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. The fact is, libraries are the heart of our community. We heard from a contribution earlier on about how the older people have their coffee mornings in the library. We heard how the small kids have their reading clubs in the library. And to do that, you need librarians, you need volunteers, of course, yes, nobody's saying there's no role for volunteers, but you need librarians to facilitate that, and you need the space to do it. And one of the problems I have is I don't think Mill Hill Library is going to close. The question is, what will Mill Hill Library look like at the end of this process? That's the key issue. And the 3 options, I don't think anyone's actually explaining what the 3 options are tonight, they're on offer from the council. The first, which is their preferred option, is to cut staff and leave the libraries unstaffed for 50% of the time, and to reduce the size of the libraries. And for Mill Hill, they'll be reducing the size to 90%, by 90% of now, reducing it from 5,600 square feet to 540 square feet, the size of a small bedsit flat. Now, how on earth could you hold a coffee morning and a children's reading group and have a library in those circumstances? It's not practical, and the rest of the building would be sold off for, guess what, development. Option 2 is closing 6 libraries, which would include Mill Hill, and for the remainder of the libraries cutting staff time to 40% of the time. Option 3 is cutting 2 libraries, leaving libraries unstaffed for 50% of the time, and asking the community to take over the running of Mill Hill Library. And I go back to the point I made earlier on about the importance of librarians. Without professional librarians, you don't have a library service. And they've done wonders at Fry and Barnet taking on the council and winning their battle and having that library, but they do feel the shortage of a professional librarian to do the sort of things that a professional library should do. The one option that wasn't on that paper was no change. And I think it's disingenuous to ask people to vote between 3 options, when the one option that I think is the most popular is not even on the inverted commas, ballot paper. So it's right that libraries can't stay still. Libraries do have to modernise. And I don't have a problem with the corner of the library being set aside for a coffee shop, though preferably not Starbucks for the reasons previously indicated. But that is an adjunct to a library. It can provide a social function at the same time. As it does in any library, I think it's successful there. There are other things you can do with the library as well. I was recently in Tel Aviv, and what they've done with their library is amazing. They've cornered off a small part of the library, smaller than, probably about the size of this platform, probably slightly smaller, and we've set up 20 desks for business startups, where people have graduated from their back bedroom and need somewhere to have a little more space and research to do it. They interview people to make sure they're genuine, they charge them a relatively nominal rent, and it works, because it helps not just the library survive from their rent, it also helps stimulate the local economy and provide opportunities for new business startups to keep going. And they help by bringing in entrepreneurs from outside to listen to what they have to say. That's the sort of thing you can do to modernise a library. But you need a librarian to run it to make it happen. It's not just, and you need the space to make it happen. And these proposals don't provide either of those. So the argument is, where does the money come from? Well, we're actually now looking at, according to the report, paragraph 5.2.4, £2.85 million over the course of 5 years. And people come with ideas, you know, do we have to have a council tax? I'll give you two examples. Two ways money could come from. We have huge development going on in this ward, in this constituency, and in this ward. Huge development. The developers are left off far too easily from the Section 106 payments they should be making to as a contribution. The developers could make a Section 106 contribution to our library service. The council spends £17 million a year on consultants. That's a fraction of the amount spent on consultants instead of direct employee staff. That's just two examples. And I could sit here and give you probably half a dozen more off the top of my head, and we've had some examples from the floor here. This is not a huge amount of money for this council to save and to find elsewhere. But the destruction to the lives of our community, to the lives of our old folk, to the lives of our kids, to the lives of everybody, if any of these two proposals go through, is horrendous, because it does spell the end of the library service. So my challenge to three councillors is this: will you vote to keep Mill Hill Library as it now is, with the library staff? Because anything else is not what we want. Not just Mill Hill Library, but all the libraries. That's the key test for you three councillors. Because if you three councillors vote the way I suspect most people in this room want, your constituents, and Matthew's constituents and my constituents, I suspect, and I know, that vote would be carried and the libraries would not be decimated in this way. Because I can tell you, the Labour councillors will vote that way. Will you vote with the Labour councillors to preserve our library service? If we can keep calm, we're actually so far a very calm and effective debate and discussion. And I don't think shouting at the too long, no matter how much I'd like to join the shouting, I'm not going to do that. Let's try and keep the debate calm. There's just one point I'd like to make on Section 106 in response to John Hart, and that's this. Hammersmith and Fulham changed administration last year when Labour took over from the Conservatives. The new Labour leader of Hammersmith Council has already screwed out the existing agreements with developers an extra £26 million because the Conservatives have not been tough enough with the developers there. And the fact is, I don't think Barnet Council is tough enough with developers. I think they get away with blue murder in terms of Section 106, in terms of affordable accommodation. That's not the debate for now. It's simply a point I make that there are ways that the money could be found if the political will was there. Unfortunately, the political will is not there.
James Levy, I've come from Golders.
Very out of steam, a bit like the council. I'd like to start off by having a straw poll here. How many people here would like to see an option for to be voted on by the public. And if option 4 was available, how many people would vote for it? Well, that's a pretty clear indication to the 3 ward councillors here tonight how people expect them to vote. Richard raised a couple of points. I mean, I think the suggestion that at the very least it should be put on hold until the government task force is reported, whichever party's in power in the summer, is a very sensible one. Because it's a bit like putting salt in soup. You can always put more in, but you can't take it out. And if by the time that task force reports, these proposals have gone through or on the way to go through, if the buildings have been, a large part, closed down and sold off for development, you can't have them back again. That's the problem. So, but the options here do not allow for that to take place. And I think that's a very sensible, realistic, non-party political approach to what is a thorny problem for the council. We could also comment on the problem of the 30-minute travel. Well, yeah, I use the buses quite a lot, and you see young mothers all the time struggling to get the pushchair on the bus and the shopping and everything else. It's a battle for them, even with, if they can get the bus driver to drop the floor, which half the time we wait, in fact more than half the time we wait. You know, I can't envisage a busy mother putting her kids on the bus to go take them to the library with all those pressures. It's going to be half an hour journey. We don't have fractious kids get on the bus journey after 5 minutes. Half an hour? Let's get real here. It's just not going to happen. I think the point about the council tax is a good one. It's not a question of raising council tax. Don't cut it. Don't cut it. Leave it alone. That would provide significant funds. Boris Johnson spent the council tax. He showed council tax by 10%. That's worth to you 7p a week. But it generates an awful lot of money, which we'll be putting forward proposals at City Hall very shortly as to how that ought to be spent. What I say to you is to keep up this fight. There's a huge momentum behind this. Rich has already mentioned that tomorrow night was the area forum at 6:30 at the town hall. The councillors will be there. Come along, Richard's already put it on the agenda. Come along and support Richard tomorrow night. In numbers, make it clear to people, we are not going to have this in Mill Hill or anywhere else in the borough. And that's another opportunity to do it. It is a labour-intensive job, these sort of campaigns. Signing a petition is great, but that's just the start. As the lady from Unison said, we need to turn up in numbers to make your views heard if we're going to win this fight. This is a winnable fight, but only if sufficient people from places like Mill Hill stand up to be counted, not just here tonight, but night after night after night, and then we can win this fight. Somebody raised a point from the floor, just a factual point. Somebody raised a question of population growth. You may be interested in what the figures are. In 2006, the population of Mill Hill Ward was 16,747. By 2018, it's projected to go up to 21,950. By 2023, to 24,750. Half as much again. It's going to get a pretty crowded place, Mill Hill. That's why I need services for those people.